Have you ever felt a sudden, inexplicable chill, a breath on your neck in an empty room? You dismiss it, of course, just the wind, or is it? America, a land of bright lights, big dreams, and endless opportunity. But beneath that polished surface, a primal fear still lurks. A fear as old as humanity itself. And in these forgotten corners, these deep, dark shadows, stories stir. Not fairy tales, but accounts. Disturbing echoes of a time when the dead refused to stay buried. You think vampires are just European myth? Caped figures haunting ancient castles? Think again. The truth is far stranger, and much, much closer to home. These aren't just whispers in history books. They're woven into the very fabric of American towns. Stories of real people, gripped by a terror so profound they unearthed their own loved ones. Convinced a monstrous hunger was feeding from beyond the grave, are you ready to see what they found? The vampire didn't spring fully formed onto American shores. Oh no, it was a stowaway. A chilling passenger carried in the creaking hulls of immigrant ships. They came seeking new lives, new beginnings, but they brought their ancient fears with them. Fears of the unseen, of sickness that withered bodies, of death that offered no peace. In early colonial America, life wasn't just hard, it was brutal. Death was an ever-present shadow. Diseases like consumption, what we now call tuberculosis, swept through communities with terrifying speed. Families were struck down one by one, coughing their lives away. And when medicine failed, when understanding offered no comfort, superstition offered a dreadful, chilling explanation. European folklore was already rich with tales of the undead, creatures that returned to drain the life from the living. Each country had its own name, its own variation, but in the American melting pot, these stories mingled. They merged with desperate grief, with scientific ignorance, with a desperate need to find something to blame. And a uniquely American brand of vampire panic was born. A terrifying, homegrown horror that demanded action, drastic action. Let us travel now to a quiet place, Exeter, Rhode Island, late 19th century, a place you'd think was peaceful. But here, fear festered, and here, the unthinkable happened. This is the sad, strange tale of Mercy Lena Brown, known, even now, as America's last vampire. Though perhaps last is a strong word. The Brown family was cursed. First, the mother, Mary Eliza, then the eldest daughter, Mary Olive. Both withered, faded away by consumption. Then, the son, Edwin, fell gravely ill. His body wasting, his cough echoing through the silent farmhouse. George Brown, the father, was desperate. His neighbors, their faces etched with grim certainty, whispered terrible suspicions. One of the dead was not truly at rest. They were feeding on poor Edwin, from beyond the grave. The villagers, gripped by a terror that overshadowed their grief, pressured George. They demanded a horrifying ritual. In March of 1892, they gathered, and they began to dig. They exhumed Mary Eliza and Mary Olive. Their remains were decomposed, as expected. Then they came to Mercy Brown. She had died only 2 months earlier in the bitter cold of winter. And when they opened her coffin, what they saw sent a collective gasp through the gathered crowd. Her body was remarkably preserved. Her cheeks, flushed, her heart and liver still contained blood. To the terrified villagers, this was irrefutable proof. Mercy Lena Brown was a vampire, the one feeding on her dying brother, and the only way to stop her was a ritual so barbaric, so desperate, it chills the blood even today. The ashes mixed with water and given to her brother, Edwin, as a final, desperate cure. He died shortly after. If we could listen to the past, what would it say? Imagine Dr. Alistair Finch, a modern folklorist. These panics, he'd explain, were born of unimaginable grief, a desperate need for answers where medicine utterly failed. He'd adjust his spectacles. When you cannot explain a horror, the human mind creates a monster. Then, picture Miss Eleanor Vance, a local librarian, her fingers dusty from ancient town records. The newspapers of the time, she'd whisper, her voice hushed. They sensationalized these events, of course. But the fear, that was real, palpable. She would show you brittle, yellowed clippings, articles detailing the exhumations, the gruesome rituals, the names of families torn apart, first by disease, then by dread. These weren't just whispered gossips, they were documented, debated. They became part of the local history, passed down, generation to generation, a chilling legacy. Now let us leave the cold, hard earth of New England. Let us journey south. To a city of warmth and perpetual dancing shadows, New Orleans, the Crescent City, a place where music spills onto the streets like liquid moonlight, where history breathes from every ornate balcony, and where the night itself feels alive, alive with possibilities both wondrous and wicked. If any American city was made for vampires, it is this one. Nestled by the Mississippi, its Vieux Carré, the French Quarter, feels like its unbeating heart. Here, legends of vampires are as rich as the local gumbo. They are whispered in antique shops filled with forgotten secrets, recounted on gaslit tours that prowl the darkened streets, tales of elegant, immortal beings and of creatures far more savage. The city's unique blend of cultures, French, Spanish, African, Caribbean, created a fertile ground for these Gothic tales. You've heard of the infamous Comte de Saint-Germain, perhaps? That enigmatic figure who appeared in the early 1900s. Charming, fabulously wealthy, he threw lavish parties. He claimed to be centuries old, and some whispered he only drank a strange red liquid. But what are the lesser-known facts in this city of fables? Beyond the famous names, other elements fed the vampire fears. New Orleans was no stranger to devastating epidemics. Yellow fever in particular swept through repeatedly. It caused high fevers, delirium, a jaundiced, deathly pallor. Victims often suffered internal bleeding, leading to ghastly, blood-stained vomit. Imagine the sheer terror, the confusion. It's not a great leap from such horrors to tales of beings who drain life and blood. Let's conjure Antoine Devereaux, a fictional tour guide, his voice a low drawl, steeped in city secrets. People still see things, he might tell you, a glint in his eye. Shadows moving too fast in the St. Louis cemetery, a pale face in an upstairs window of an empty mansion. He'd speak of modern encounters, hushed and uncertain. Are they real? Or is it the intoxicating, dangerous power of suggestion? In a city so drenched in the supernatural, the lines between reality and legend don't just blur, they beautifully, dangerously merge. While New England and New Orleans wear their vampire histories openly, like dark, velvet cloaks, they are not alone. Whispers of the undead echo in other, less expected corners of America. These tales may be more fragmented, more localized, but they are there, buried in dusty old county histories, whispered by the oldest residents, their eyes holding ancient knowledge. Each region infuses the myth with its own unique flavor, its own local anxieties, its own desolate landscapes. The vampire, it seems, is a terrifyingly versatile creature. Consider the vast, lonely stretches of the Midwest, isolated pioneer communities, vulnerable to unseen forces. Here, too, disease could decimate families, and folklore offered its grim consolations. There are scattered accounts of suspected wasters, of bodies exhumed on the prairie. The methods might differ slightly from New England, but the underlying fear was the same. The raw, primal terror of the dead returning, to prey, to consume, a fear as old as humanity itself. So we've journeyed, from colonial graves to gaslit city streets. We've seen how folklore traveled and transformed, how the ravages of disease ignited the terrifying image of the undead. But why? Why does the vampire hold such sway over us even now in our bright scientific age? Why do we still tell these stories? Why do we still look over our shoulders in the dark? The answer, perhaps, is as complex as the creature itself. It's an enduring mystery. The vampire isn't just a monster, it's a powerful metaphor. It represents our deepest fears, of death, of disease, of the unknown that lurks just beyond our understanding. But also perhaps our deepest, most forbidden desires, Immortality, eternal youth, irresistible allure. The vampire is both terrifying monster and dark anti-hero, undeniably captivating, a chilling mirror reflecting parts of ourselves. Our modern culture is saturated with vampires. They're in our books, our films, our television shows. They have adapted, just as they adapted to new lands and new fears centuries ago. This enduring popularity shows that the core themes resonate: the struggle between life and death, good and evil, the allure of the forbidden, the power of the night, and the lingering question: what if some shadows never truly fade? What are your thoughts on America's hidden vampire history? Have you heard other tales? Share them in the comments below. And if this journey into the darkness chilled you, subscribe, because the shadows hold many more secrets.